My dad flew into a terrified rage when he found out I bought a 5-bedroom house without consulting him. I later discovered he had already promised the entire property to my sister, her husband, and their 3 kids. When I firmly said no, he ambushed me in front of 50 guests at my grandma's 75th birthday dinner. He had no idea I had already uncovered his secret financial crimes and filed the paperwork to ruin him. My name is Ayla Pickett. To understand how a routine real estate closing in Knoxville, Tennessee, triggered the complete public destruction of my family's social standing and exposed a $500,000 trust embezzlement scheme, you have to understand the suffocating control my father, Marcus Pickett, enforced over our lives for more than 3 decades. For as long as I can remember, my father operated our household like a personal fiefdom. Marcus was a retired senior branch manager for a regional commercial bank, a man whose entire identity was built on financial dominance, social status, and absolute authority. He believed that no decision regarding money, career paths, or property could be made by anyone in the family without his explicit approval and direct oversight. My younger sister, Brianna, submitted to his control completely. She was a pampered, entitled woman who had never worked a full-time job in her life. Brianna was married to Derek Vaughn, a chronic, silver-tongued, failed contractor whose business, Vaughn Custom Build LLC, was infamous across Knox County for abandoned job sites, unpaid subcontractor debts, and chaotic court disputes. Despite Derek's obvious financial incompetence, my father continuously shielded them, funding their luxury vacations and covering their unpaid bills while portraying Derek as a misunderstood entrepreneurial genius. I chose a completely different path. I worked relentlessly to build my independence, earning a degree in finance and rising to become a senior commercial forensic risk analyst at Appalachian Regional Trust. My job was to dissect corporate balance sheets, investigate loan defaults, trace hidden assets, and identify financial fraud. I lived modestly in a small rented apartment, drove a sensible sedan, and kept my financial affairs strictly private from my father's invasive eyes. Over 9 years of disciplined budgeting, strategic stock market investments, and performance bonuses, I accumulated a substantial liquid portfolio. At 31, I decided it was time to put down permanent roots. I found my dream home in Farragut, a quiet, picturesque suburb west of Knoxville. It was a magnificent 4,800 square foot brick traditional house situated on 2 private acres, featuring 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, a custom kitchen, and a stunning sunroom overlooking the woods. The house was priced at $680,000. After months of careful negotiation, I purchased the property entirely in my own name, making a substantial 40% down payment from my private funds and securing a clean mortgage for the remainder. Knowing my father's pathological need to control everything, I intentionally chose not to tell him or Brianna about the purchase until after the closing documents were recorded at the Knox County Register of Deeds. I wanted to enjoy my milestone achievement without Marcus critiquing my mortgage rate, judging my choice of neighborhood, or demanding to oversee the closing process. On a crisp Tuesday afternoon, 2 days after I received the keys, my phone exploded with 12 missed calls from my father. When I answered, Marcus didn't say, "Hello." He screamed so loudly into the receiver that I had to pull the phone away from my ear.
"Ayla!" Marcus roared, his voice trembling with sheer fury. "What in God's name have you done? I just got an automated real estate deed alert for Knox County showing you purchased a $680,000 home in Farragut. How dare you make a major property acquisition without consulting me first? Who do you think you are?" I sat back in my desk chair at my office, keeping my tone perfectly measured. "Dad, I am a 31-year-old financial analyst. I bought a house with my own hard-earned money and private investments. I don't need your permission or consultation to buy real estate." "You arrogant, ungrateful girl," Marcus spat, his breathing heavy. "I am the head of this family. My financial wisdom built this family's standing. You went behind my back because you think you're smarter than everyone else, but you just made a massive mistake." "There is no mistake, Dad," I replied calmly. "The deed is recorded. The keys are in my hand, and I am moving in this weekend." That was when Marcus dropped the real reason for his panic, a revelation that left me speechless. "You listen to me right now, Ayla," Marcus demanded, his voice dropping into an authoritative bark. "Derek's construction business filed for restructuring last week, and their landlord served them an eviction notice on their rental home yesterday. They have 3 young children. I promised Derek and Brianna 2 weeks ago that as soon as you finalized a property purchase, they, their kids, and Derek's home office would move into your top-floor bedrooms rent-free for the next 3 years until they get back on their feet." I stared at the wall of my office, a cold sensation spreading through my chest. "You promised my house to Brianna and Derek without ever speaking to me?" "It's a 5-bedroom house, Ayla," Marcus yelled. "You're a single woman. You don't need 4 empty bedrooms. Family takes care of family. I told them they could pack their moving trucks and move in this coming Monday. You will hand over the keys to the upper floor, and you will support your sister." The sheer audacity was breathtaking. My father had treated my life's greatest financial achievement as a free warehouse for his favorite, unproductive daughter and her toxic husband. "No, Dad," I said, my voice as hard as flint. "Absolutely not." "What did you say to me?" Marcus gasped. "I said no," I repeated with absolute clarity. "Derek has destroyed 3 rental properties, he has unpaid judgments against him, and I am not turning my peaceful home into a chaotic, rent-free shelter for adults who refuse to take accountability for their lives. They will not be moving in on Monday, or ever. If you refuse to help your sister and her innocent children, you are no daughter of mine," Marcus screamed into the phone. "I will make sure this entire family knows what a heartless, selfish monster you are. You will regret this, Ayla." He slammed the phone down. Within hours, my father launched a vicious smear campaign across our entire extended family. Brianna called me 20 times, leaving frantic voicemails, sobbing that I was forcing her 3 children onto the street. Derek sent me aggressive text messages claiming I was ruining his business recovery. Uncles, aunts, and cousins flooded my inbox with guilt-tripping messages accusing me of cold-hearted arrogance because I owned a large home while my sister struggled. I ignored the emotional noise. As a forensic analyst, I knew that when people react with extreme irrational panic to a boundary, there is almost always a hidden financial lie underneath. I sat down at my computer and started doing what I do best, following the paper trail. Why was my father so frantically desperate to force Derek and Brianna into my house? Why couldn't Marcus simply house them in his own large residence or pay for their rental apartment?
I pulled public court dockets from the Knox County Chancery Court, corporate registry filings from the Tennessee Secretary of State, and property records. What I discovered over the next 48 hours left me stunned. First, Derek's business hadn't just struggled. Vaughn Custom Build LLC was facing over $300,000 in defaulted commercial loans. And my father, Marcus, had secretly signed as a personal guarantor on 2 of those major loans without telling anyone. If Derek's creditors executed judgments, the banks would immediately seize Marcus's personal liquid accounts and assets to satisfy the debt. Second, when I searched the Knox County Register of Deeds database for my own newly purchased Farragut property, I made a shocking discovery. Just 48 hours after my closing, a fraudulent $195,000 mechanics lien had been recorded against my property title by Vaughn Custom Build LLC. Attached was a forged contract and fake invoice claiming that Derek's company had performed extensive luxury renovation work on my home prior to sale. My father and Derek had colluded to place a massive, illegal cloud on my property title. Their plan was sinister. They assumed that as a young homeowner, I would panic when I discovered the lien. Marcus planned to step in and offer to resolve the $195,000 debt if I agreed to let Brianna and Derek live in my home rent-free for 3 years. They were attempting to blackmail me with my own house. Third, and most devastatingly, I investigated the financial records of my grandmother, Beatrice Pickett. Grandma Beatrice was 75 years old, a wealthy, dignified widow whose late husband had founded a highly successful medical supply distribution firm. 10 years prior, Grandma Beatrice had established a $3 million irrevocable family trust intended to fund her long-term health care, cover her living expenses, and provide college inheritances for her grandchildren. My father, Marcus, served as the sole managing trustee of this fund. Because I held professional auditing credentials, I was able to review historical trust tax filings and public banking registry disclosures associated with the trust entity. The records revealed a horrific crime. Over the previous 3 years, Marcus had systematically embezzled $450,000 directly from Grandma Beatrice's healthcare trust. He had routed the stolen cash through shell accounts to pay off Derek's construction creditors, satisfy his own personal credit lines, and buy himself a $120,000 luxury cabin cruiser boat moored at Norris Lake. Marcus was not a benevolent family patriarch. He was a desperate, thieving fraudster running out of time before Grandma Beatrice's independent accountants conducted their scheduled 5-year trust review. I didn't yell. I didn't send angry text messages. I quietly gathered certified court documents, bank routing records, forged lien filings, and corporate registry affidavits. I compiled a bulletproof 200-page forensic audit file and contacted Franklin Vance, a top-tier criminal defense and trust litigation attorney in downtown Knoxville. This is open and shut felony financial fraud, forgery, and trust embezzlement, Isla, Franklin Vance told me after reviewing the evidence. Your father and brother-in-law have committed major state and federal crimes. Grandma Beatrice's 75th birthday party is this Saturday night. That is where we end this. Saturday evening arrived. The celebration was held in the grand ballroom of the historic Cherokee Country Club, an exclusive venue in West Knoxville, overlooking the Tennessee River. Over 60 distinguished guests had gathered, including high court judges, prominent bank executives, local politicians, and extended family members.
Grandma Beatrice sat near the front of the room in an elegant silver dress, smiling as guests offered gifts and warm wishes. My father, Marcus, wore an expensive tuxedo, strutting around the room like royalty. Brianna was draped in a designer dress bought with stolen money, while Derek stood by the bar sipping top-shelf scotch. Throughout the first hour of the event, Marcus made a point of making loud, passive-aggressive comments within earshot of guests, loudly lamenting how some children grow up to be selfish and abandon their family in times of need, pointing his gaze directly at me. I sat quietly at a side table, wearing an elegant dark navy dress, sipping sparkling water, waiting for the right moment. At 8 o'clock, Marcus stepped up to the brass microphone at the center stage to deliver the main toast to Grandma Beatrice. "Friends, family, and distinguished guests," Marcus announced, his voice booming through the ballroom speakers. "We are here to celebrate my wonderful mother, Beatrice, a woman who taught us that family is the ultimate pillar of life." The room applauded, but then Marcus's face darkened, and he turned his eyes directly toward me. "Regrettably," Marcus continued loudly into the microphone, his voice dripping with theatrical sadness, "not everyone in this room honors that sacred duty. My eldest daughter, Ayla, recently bought a massive 5-bedroom mansion in Farragut. Yet when her own sister, Brianna, her hardworking husband, Derek, and their 3 innocent young children faced housing hardship, Ayla cold-heartedly shut her doors. She refused to give them shelter. I speak this truth publicly tonight because arrogance and greed must be exposed, even when it comes from your own blood." A collective, uncomfortable gasp echoed across the ballroom. Guests shifted in their seats. Brianna dabbed a fake tear from her eye while Derek smirked triumphantly.
Marcus smiled, convinced he had publicly humiliated me into submission in front of Knoxville society. I slowly stood up from my chair. I picked up a leather briefcase from beside my seat, walked calmly up the center aisle, and stepped directly onto the stage beside my father. "Thank you for bringing that up, Dad," I said, my voice crisp and clear into the second microphone. "Let's talk about why you were really so desperate to force Derek and Brianna into my home." Marcus's smile vanished, replaced with a flash of annoyance. "Ayla, sit down. You are making a fool of yourself." "I don't think so, Marcus," I replied calmly. I opened my briefcase, pulled out a stock of bound, certified forensic documents, and turned toward Grandma Beatrice and the seated guests. "First," I announced clearly, 3 days ago, my father Marcus and brother-in-law Derek recorded a fraudulent $195,000 mechanics lien against my private home title using a forged contractor invoice from a bankrupt company. They attempted to blackmail me into giving up my property." The crowd gasped loudly. Derek's face drained of all color. "Second," I continued, holding up the banking routing records, "Marcus was desperate for free housing for Derek because Marcus personally guaranteed $300,000 of Derek's defaulted business debts, which are currently facing court execution." "Shut up! Shut your mouth!" Marcus screamed, reaching out to grab my arm. Before he could touch me, my attorney, Franklin Vance, stepped onto the stage, placing a firm hand on Marcus's chest. "Touch her, Marcus, and you add felony assault to your indictment." I turned directly to my grandmother, Beatrice, whose eyes were wide with shock.
"And third, Grandma," I said softly, handing a thick, red folder directly into her hands. "This is a certified forensic audit of your $3 million family trust. Over the past 3 years, Marcus has embezzled $450,000 from your healthcare fund to pay off Derek's gambling debts, cover his own defaulted loans, and purchase a luxury boat." Grandma Beatrice opened the folder. As her eye scanned the certified bank transfer logs bearing Marcus's signature, tears of anger welled in her eyes. She looked up at her son with pure disgust. "Marcus, you stole from me?" Grandma Beatrice whispered, her voice trembling into the quiet room. "You stole from your own mother?" "Mother, no, she's lying. It's a setup." Marcus panicked, his voice cracking hysterically. At that exact moment, the heavy double doors of the country club ballroom opened. 2 uniformed Knox County Sheriff deputies, accompanied by 2 investigators from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation, whom Franklin Vance had contacted earlier that afternoon, walked smoothly into the room. The lead investigator stepped onto the stage, pulling a formal arrest warrant from his coat. "Marcus Pickett and Derek Vaughn," the investigator announced loudly. "You are under arrest for felony trust embezzlement, grand larceny, forgery of legal documents, and filing false public instruments." The room erupted into absolute chaos. Guests pulled out their phones, snapping photos and recording video as the deputies grabbed Marcus and Derek, pulling their arms behind their backs and snapping steel handcuffs over their wrists. Marcus broke down into pathetic, hysterical screaming, struggling against the officers as he was dragged down the carpeted aisle in front of 60 high society guests. "Ayla, stop them. You ruined my life. You ruined this family." "You ruined yourself, Dad," I said quietly as he was led out the door. Brianna screamed frantically, rushing after her husband and father as they were loaded into the back of police cruisers in the country club parking lot. The legal and financial destruction of Marcus Pickett and Derek Vaughn was swift, absolute, and merciless. Faced with undeniable forensic banking records and forged lien filings, Marcus pleaded guilty to federal trust embezzlement, forgery, and tax fraud. He was sentenced to 7 years in a federal correctional facility and ordered to pay full restitution to Grandma Beatrice's trust. To satisfy the judgment, his luxury boat was seized,
His personal bank accounts were liquidated, and his retirement pension was garnished. Derek Vaughn was convicted of felony forgery and commercial fraud, receiving a 4-year prison sentence. His construction firm was forcibly dissolved by court order. The Knox County Chancery Court officially expunged the fraudulent $195,000 mechanics lien from my Farragut property title, clearing my home completely.
Grandma Beatrice immediately executed a legal order revoking Marcus's authority, naming me as the sole managing trustee of the Pickett Family Trust. Under my professional oversight, the trust funds were fully recovered, secured, and allocated to ensure Grandma Beatrice received the highest quality care and comfort for the rest of her life. Brianna was forced to sell her luxury possessions to pay off outstanding personal debts. Unable to afford her lifestyle, she moved into a tiny 2-bedroom rental apartment on the outskirts of Knoxville, taking an entry-level retail job to support her 3 children while facing total social isolation from the community. Today, my life is filled with profound peace, quiet strength, and genuine happiness. My beautiful brick home in Farragut is a sanctuary of warmth and tranquility. On quiet weekend evenings, sitting in my sunroom with a hot cup of coffee while looking out over the peaceful woods, I feel an overwhelming sense of pride. I proved that true independence cannot be intimidated. Family rank cannot justify corruption, and living with unyielding integrity will always dismantle the loudest lies.